The Bella Vita tattoo that she had, that they went to the jail to take pictures of, how significant is that evidence in and of itself? Forget about the fact that she went to get the tattoo and never was looking for Kaylee, and somebody was asking her where Kaylee was, and she was saying she was fine, instead of, as she told us, she was out looking for Kaylee that whole month on her own. But just the tattoo itself, Bella Vita, beautiful life, telling people Kaylee was fine. How damaging is that she went out and got a tattoo like that just days after Kaylee disappeared?
Another damaging and damning piece of evidence. It just shows that it's so inconsistent with a mother who has turned over a child to a babysitter who has disappeared with the child, and you don't know as the mother whether the child is in jeopardy, in danger, has been spirited away, whether you're ever going to see the child again or not. And to get a tattoo that at that time in her mind it's a beautiful life, that is so bizarre and inconsistent with a desperate mother whose child has been taken by a third party.
What does it tell you that 3 pieces of duct tape apparently were found in similar in length, around 6 inches long, over her face?
It tells me that when Casey placed the tape over that child's mouth, she wanted to make sure that the mouth and the nose area was covered and that that child could not breathe.
How do you think a jury will view that? I mean, it's bad enough to hear duct tape over the mouth, and I guess I pictured 1 piece of duct tape, I don't know why, but to hear 3, what effect do you think that'll have on the jury to hear that there were 3 pieces?
In deciding whether or not to impose the death penalty, this is going to add to the cruelty of this act, and it's going to be something that jurors will use to justify their opinion that she should be placed to death for this crime.
Do you, the emotional part of that, what effect do you think that'll have?
It's going to have a huge emotional impact. I have witnessed people looking at this and have actually been reduced to tears. Do I think that a juror would be any less impacted by it? The answer to that is no, they will not. It will be more so. It's going to be an emotional, this is going to be a very emotional trial to begin with. And when it comes to the penalty phase, it's going to be extremely emotional. And it's this type of evidence that's going to just make jurors emotionally raw.
When you say you've witnessed, but I want to make sure I understand. You've witnessed jurors look at evidence like this, you're saying, and people get reduced to tears in the courtroom.
Well, I have witnessed jurors looking at this type of evidence and getting emotional in the courtroom. I've also witnessed people looking at what we're looking at as far as this duct tape and others and become overwhelmed with emotion. So yes, this is an emotional, very emotional piece of evidence.
And if I understand you correctly, when you say that, in this case, Casey's charged with this, so if it were Casey who did this, if the murderer puts 3 pieces of duct tape, they're really trying to make sure of something.
The person who placed this duct tape and put it in multiple layers did it for one reason and one reason only, to make sure that that child could not breathe either through the mouth or the nose. It's strong evidence that this child probably died by suffocation.
And I'm going to ask you one more question. I've heard this kind of testimony before and can't remember the details of it, maybe on purpose, but when someone dies of suffocation, is it painful? Do they panic? What's your knowledge of that kind of a death?
Well, have someone put a piece of duct tape over your mouth and your nose and you can hold your breath for a number of seconds, and then there comes a realization that you cannot breathe and you're struggling for air, and the panic that must ensue is unimaginable, and the cruelty of suffocation is just it reaches on a high scale of cruelty. So at some point you know you're going to die because you can't breathe, and whether that's 1 second or 5 seconds, at least at some point in your mind you know, I'm dying because I can't breathe.
Do you, if we think about a 2-year-old child, almost 3, if you know, I mean, I don't know, but if you know a 3-year-old, at least they might not understand they were dying, but maybe they would, I don't know, but also just knowing they can't breathe would cause panic.
Absolutely.
I mean,
not being able to, just a 2-year-old not knowing they can't breathe and struggling to breathe, it certainly would be a point where they would become panicked and not understand what they're feeling, but knowing they can't breathe.